and welcome back to Book and Page. We are nearing the end of The Hobbit because we're already on chapter 17, The Clouds Burst. Okay, this is sort of the big climax of the book, which is a little weird because you sort of figured that was going to be against Smaug. Nope, turns out we're going to kill each other and get killed a lot before we hit the end of this. Whoops. Okay, summary-wise. So Bard and Gandalf, at the beginning of this chapter, attempt to bargain with Thorin using the Arkenstone. And Bilbo is, upon admitting that he gave them the Arkenstone, is almost thrown off the mountain, but at Gandalf's intervention is allowed to leave safely instead. Dane arrives with his host of dwarves and tries to make for the mountain, but Bard and the Wood King sort of have this plan to get in the way. And just before the battle can start between the dwarves and the elves and men, Gandalf warns, there's a goblin army coming down on us. Maybe we should fight them instead. And the dwarves, men, and elves join forces, but are actually being overrun until Thorin and the company come charging out of the mountain. Except, it turns out 13 people can't turn the tide of battle too long, and they're on the defensive, and we're all probably gonna die until Bilbo, who's actually on Raven Hill with the elven host and Gandalf, notices that eagles are coming, just as he's knocked out. So we get, eagles are coming, and Bilbo's out, and the chapter ends. So, can we solve this using this thing we got last chapter? Nope, we're all gonna die. Yay, okay. Let's talk about a few things here. First, I think, well, we're gonna sandwich it. We're gonna talk about Bilbo, then we're gonna talk about this whole war business, and then we're gonna talk about Bilbo again at the end. So, Thorin has discovered that Bard has the Arkenstone, and he immediately wants to know who has betrayed him, that the Arkenstone is not in the mountain, but with his enemies. Bilbo immediately admits that he gave it to them. Like, no one's looking at him, and he's like, that was me. Except more like, that was me. I'm gonna die right now, huh? Like, right away, he admits his guilt and takes full responsibility. There's no mention of him taking over Bomber's shift and Bomber being part of this. Like, no, he's just, right away, just like, yep, that was me. Because I'm trying to save your lives. And it's interesting because he admits he's guilty in this, but he's not gonna go quietly, as it were. Like, he's really willing to push back against Thorin here in a couple meaningful ways, and not just having literally given the Arkenstone to Thorin's enemies. He goes against the verbal abuse that Thorin starts heaping on him. Like, he directly reminds Thorin that the dwarves found him useful prior to this. And there is no good reason to call him a descendant of rats. Like, oh, cool, thanks Thorin, this is what we've come to? A descendant of rats. No, no, I don't deserve that, I've helped you this far. And he actually directly calls out Thorin by saying, I have been told that dwarves are sometimes politer in word than in deed. He's reminding Thorin that Smaug himself has actually accused Thorin of not treating his agreement with Bilbo seriously. And that he's going to betray Bilbo, despite everything he claims. So, like, Bilbo directly calls Thorin out and says, yeah, I've heard this is true, and you're proving it. Like, everything Thorin has done up to this point is just, yep, nope, Smaug was right. And, you have no care in the world for what I'm going through. You're literally gonna backstab everybody to get some treasure. And Thorin's willing to prove it. It goes further than that. Like, he full well is planning on trying to figure out how to get the Arkenstone back without giving the agreed amount treasure to, the starving men of Lake Town who had their town destroyed by a dragon. That's a thing that they need to try and help fix, or not. Or they could just not worry about that. Also, my cat has come to join me, because she was very nicely taking a nap up to this point, and then decided, while I was talking, that she had to come along. So, Thorin is so blinded by gold that he's willing to backstab Bilbo, and Bard, and Gandalf. Maybe not a good idea. But it turns out that the common enemy is the one that saved the day on this one. I'm not sure the goblins count as a Deus Ex Machina. That's probably the Eagles. But it should prove how far all the leaders in this have fallen, that it literally takes a common goblin enemy army showing up before they can actually communicate with each other. Like, it's only when the possibility of total death and destruction for all of their people is literally right on top of them, before they're willing to actually talk to each other and work together. And everyone is so involved in fighting each other that they had no idea that this other army was coming. Only Gandalf seemed to have some idea of it. I mean, Thorin and the dwarves literally have raven scouts who never noticed the goblin army coming. They've just been so totally obsessed with taking out the men and elves that, they want to protect their treasure so much they forget to protect their lives. And what's actually really interesting about this is they would have lost the battle anyways if it had not been for the selfless intervention of two groups. That would be the Eagles, who we get at the end of this chapter, and Bjorn, who we hear about fully in the next chapter. It takes people who have no stake in the treasure of the mountain to actually get involved in this for them to win this battle. It takes people realizing that, separate from the treasure, this battle is important, and they need to win it. Like, the Eagles aren't here to get any gold. The Eagles are here because they've noticed the goblins are coming, and, maybe letting goblins kill an entire wood elf army, an entire dwarven army, and take over the Lonely Mountain is probably a bad idea. The Eagles don't care about the gold. They care about the world falling to the goblins, which is a strong possibility. Thorin's change of heart and his last stand would have been utterly useless. It's too late. If he wanted to change heart and save his people, it was a lot sooner before this point that he should have done it. And in fact, you actually see that in his description when he shows up to the battle. Tolkien notes, "In the gloom, the great dwarf gleamed like gold in a dying fire." His description shows that this delay has resulted in futility. The fire is dying. And while it might have this pretty last moment, they say that the brightest lights and the kindest people show up right before it gets dark. Minerva's owl flies at dusk, as the saying goes. Thorin's too late. And all of these people are going to die because of it. The battle is only won at great cost and selfless intervention. It's not won by Thorin or the Wood King or Bard. They were too absorbed in their own greed that it would have cost everything except for the intervention of some people who didn't have a stake. The elves and Bjorn, and I think also we can include Gandalf, who was the first to warn them that this army was coming. And to sort of lead the cooperation charge by demanding that they work together. Like, that's frightening. the good guys aren't the good guys here. And everything could have been lost utterly because everyone was too selfish. Okay, so I said we were going to sandwich this, talk about Bilbo at the start, then talk about how screwed up all of this is, and then we'll talk about Bilbo at the end. Real quick here, because I honestly don't know what to think about this. I don't know what's happened. But Tolkien tells us that Bilbo joined the elf host on Ravenhill because his Tookish side felt if he was going to be in a last desperate stand, he preferred on the whole to defend the Elven King. So what's changed? What is different here that we haven't seen yet? What has the Elven King, the Wood King, shown to Bilbo in this moment that makes him choose the Elf King over anybody else? This includes Bilbo being fully aware that the dwarves were held prisoner by them, by the Wood Elves. By several accounts of Bard being a real good person, and also somebody to defend. Something changed in the Wood King that Bilbo has now seen, that we have to somehow take into account. And the only real hint I can find, maybe, of what's switched is right before we get the almost start of the battle between the elves and men and the dwarves, Bard starts getting, like, real bloodlusty. Fools to have come thus beneath the mountain's arm. They do not understand war above ground. Let us set on them now from both sides before they are fully rested. Like, Bard goes a little war-hungry. And then we get this note. But the Elven King said, "Long will I tarry ere I begin this war for gold. The dwarves cannot pass us unless we will, or do anything that we cannot, they do anything we cannot mark. Let us hope still that something that will bring reconciliation. Our advantage in numbers will be enough if the end of it must come to unhappy blows." So, like, the Elf King finally figures out that maybe this isn't gonna go well. Maybe we need to not start this battle and try and find other ways around it. Try and bring reconciliation. So maybe that's the moment that Bilbo sees and goes, "Oh, you know, out of all of you, I'm going to go down with him." Because he's the first one out of these leaders that has legitimately figured out killing each other here is not the answer. Yeah, so we're almost at the end, and despite everything, we have come to unhappy blows against the goblins, who for the most part are winning. That's not good. We've got 2 more chapters to go, wrap everything up. So, I'm going to keep reading, and I hope you do too. See you next time.